Hi guys, I'm just going to give it a couple of minutes and then we will start with the answers for this week. Okay, so let's get started with these questions. Okay, so our first question was to print 10 random numbers. So we start by importing our random module, and it's got that green squiggly line because we're not using it yet, so it's just giving us a reminder, are we going to use it? So to print one random number, we do print the name of the module, which is random, and then the function we want to use within it, which is randint, and then the range of the random numbers we want it to go between. So we want it between 1 and 10. And you can see every time I do this, it'll give me a different random number. But if I want to print 10 random numbers, I will use my for loop. So for number in range 10, and then it's going to print 10 completely random numbers. So that is how you print 10 random numbers. So number 2, keep asking the user to enter a number until they enter the number 7, then print, wow, lucky number 7. Okay, so the first thing we need to do, again, because I've commented out import random above, we need to do import random again. And we're going, in our while loop, we're going to have while guess doesn't equal 7, but because we're using this variable here, we have to declare it before the while loop, otherwise it won't know what this is because it hasn't seen it before. So outside of the while loop, we'll state that guess equals none. So that just means it has no value. So while our guess doesn't equal 7, we're now going to update the variable to ask for a number. So int input guess a number. So that means now every time this loop checks the number, if it's not 7, it's going to ask you again to enter a number. But once you do give it a 7, the loop will break and it'll print, wow, lucky number 7. Okay, so let's try that out. So we'll guess a number, 5, 2, 0, and then we'll try 7, and it's worked. So we haven't had to use this yet, which it has why it has its green squiggly line. But now for 2a, we're going to rewrite this question so that the number being guessed is a random value from 1 to 10. So we can copy all this code because we'll need it. So there's two ways we can do this. So the first way we'll do it is while guess doesn't equal 7, we're going to change this guess just to a random number. And we know how to do that from question 1. So we can copy that and we can state here that the guess now equals a random number between 1 and 10. And if we play that, it says wow lucky number 7, and each time it's going to do that because the loop is going through and we're not seeing what this guess is. So for us to see how the game is actually getting played behind the scenes, we can run it again and you can see these were the numbers that were actually printed during the game. So that is having the computer play against itself. But another way we can do this is we can have the user guess a number and the number the computer has be completely random instead of it being number 7. So let's import random again because we'll need the random module. And this time we're going to state that the computer's choice can equal the random number. So whatever the computer it guesses, it's going to be random, it's going to be behind the scenes. The user choice is going to equal 0. So while the computer choice doesn't equal the user choice, then we're going to ask the user to keep entering a number. Let's just close this. So while the user choice doesn't equal the computer choice, we will ask for another number. And once you've done that, once you've guessed the computer's number, we'll break out of the loop and we'll print, well done. You guessed the right number. And we can try that. And it's just because I'd accidentally pressed enter again. So if I just press 4, 3, 6, 7. And again, if you press enter too many times, it will just give you this error because it expects an integer, but instead it got a blank space. And there we go. So 6 was the right number. So that's 2 different ways of using the random import with this. Someone's asking, can I go up please? Sure. So these are the questions we've done so far. So number 1, we imported our 10 random numbers. Number 2, we just asked the user to enter a number until it became 7 so we could break out of our while loop. 2a, the first way we did it was the computer was getting a random number and as soon as it matched 7 it would break out of the loop. And the last way we've done it is we've got the computer against the user. So for people asking what the answer is, I've just gone through it. Again, these are videos, these are recorded, so if you need to go back and re-watch them, that's fine. We just have a lot of content to get through, so I just need to make sure we get through all of it. Okay, so number 3, the area of a rectangle is width multiplied by height. So we're going to ask the user to enter a width and height in centimeters, and then we're going to print the area to the whole square meter. So if you imagine you're trying to work out how much carpet you need for a room, this could be the way you do it. For people asking to scroll up, again, remember this is a recorded video, so you can go back and pause it and look at the answers then. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do for an area of a rectangle is we're going to need to get two inputs, one for width and one for height. So width equals, we know it's going to be an integer, so int input width, and we're going to do the exact same thing, but this time for height. And we know the area in centimeters will be width times height. The area in meters squared will be area in centimeters divided by 10,000. So to go from centimeters to meters squared, we'll divide the area by 10,000. And now we'll need our, because we're going to the whole square meter, we'll need to import our math module. And then if we print math.ceil, so the module and the name of the function, and then area, so we can do it without that first and we'll see what we get. So if I am doing a very big room, okay, so we get 288,794.1312. So we don't want that 1312. So if we use the math module to round up, if we do the same thing, another two large numbers, you'll see we just get a rounded figure. So that is how we can use our math module to round up to the nearest whole number to find out our area in meters squared. Okay, so now we're going to ask the user for a password. If they enter the password QWERTY123, we're going to print you have successfully logged in. If they get it wrong, we're going to print password failure and then ask them to enter it again. And we're only going to allow them to enter the password wrong 3 times before printing system locked. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is get a user input. We're going to state what the password is. And now we want to ask them, so we'll first check if the user guess input equals password. Let's make sure this is the right one. Then we can print you have successfully logged in. Okay, but then we want them to try enter a password 3 times before getting it wrong. So what we can do is say while user guesses, so we'll create another variable outside of our loop saying the user guess, and we'll start that at 0. So while the user guess is less than 2, and we're using 2 because in Python we know it starts at 0, then if the user input does not equal password, we will print password failure and ask the user to input their password again. and each time we want the user guess to go up by 1. So every time they get it wrong, we're going to add it up, and if it gets over 3 times wrong, we'll print out system failure. Okay, we can try that out. So that's printing password failure straight away. So let's test the second part. Okay, and it's because we are not asking, we forgot to put an input here, so they can't input a password. So if we do the right password, okay, we successfully logged in, and let's try getting it wrong. Okay. Just a little mistake here. Forgot an equal sign. So let's try again. Get rid of the extra bracket. And there you go. So if you enter your password wrong 3 times, it's going to say password failure, but then once you've done it the 3rd time, it will lock you out. Okay, so now we're going to add up all the numbers from 1 to 500 and print the answer. So if you were going to do it with your for loop, you could do for x in a range 1 to 501. Because we're going to add all the numbers from 1 to 500, we need an extra variable outside of our loop called sum, where it will be able to store that value. And for the x in the range 1 to 501, we will do sum plus equals x, which is the same as sum equals sum plus x. And then once it's done it to 500 and breaks out of the loop, we'll print out the total of sum. And if everyone's had a go at it this week, you'll be able to see whether this is right. But what we'll do, so that's how you can do it with a for loop. But as we're looking at while loops this week, we can mix it up. We'll still need our sum to equal 0. But this time, we'll say while x is less than 500. And if we're going to have an x, we'll start that at 0 as well as a variable. So we have our 2 variables, sum, which is going to hold the total of the numbers from adding up from 1 to 500, and x is going to be each time it loops through our loop. So we'll start it at 0, and we'll say that each time the loop is executed, we're going to add 1 to x, and we're also going to do sum plus equals x. So what this is doing is, if we didn't have this line here, x would remain at 0, and then this loop would just never end. It'd be an infinite loop because x is always going to be less than 500, but that's not what we want. We want it to get up to 500 and add all of the numbers together. So by adding 1 each time, this will change to 1, and then the next time 2 and 3 and so forth. Sum, it will add on the 1, and then sum will become the value of sum plus x, and then it just keeps repeating that till x gets to 500, and we will again print the sum. And as you can see, we've got the exact same answer had we used a for loop. Okay, next one. We are going to create a blank list and we're going to ask the user to input 10 numbers. One of those numbers is going to be 99 and we want to find the index at which the user has entered that number. So the first thing we need to do is create our blank list and we'll call this num in list and we'll create a blank list. We're going to create a numbers variable which is going to be an empty string. And because in this one I'm going to have two for loops, I'm going to have a variable I starting at 0, a variable x starting at 0. And as it's a game, I will start off with a little bit of text saying, pick 10 numbers, one of those numbers must be 99. So that means when whoever is using this is going to know straight away what's expected of them. So for our first loop, which is where the person is going to check to add the numbers, we'll do while I is less than 10 because we want 10 numbers. Then we are going to ask the user to pick a number. So int input, pick a number. Also in our while loop, we're going to add these numbers that they pick. I think REPL is just loading. Okay, we're back. Let's scroll to where we were. Okay, here we are. So we've created our empty list, we've created our empty string for numbers, and we're doing our while loop. So while I, which was started at 0, is less than 10, we're going to ask the user to pick a number. We're then going to append that number to the list. So we'll do num underscore list.append and then numbers. So that means any number that is picked here is going to go straight into being added to this empty list. And then we'll do I plus equals 1. And just to make sure it's worked, let's print out our list. Okay, so we'll pick a number, just tidy this up. So and there we can see that all our numbers that we've input is getting added to our list. Perfect. So we can get rid of our print statement now that we know it works. So now we want the user to enter 10 numbers. We want one of them to be 99, but we want to be able to use code to check which one is 99. We don't want to print out the list and find it manually. We just want the computer to do it. So that we need to know, firstly, how long our list is. And that is how many times we'll loop through. So while x is less than the length of the number of the list, if the index of the list is equal to 99. So what that statement is saying is x is going x is going to look through the list and then it's going to print if number of the list where index is going to be x, it'll look through and it'll say, so this would be x would equal 0 here, x would equal 1, x would equal 2. So it's going to go through each of the indexes and say, does that value of the index of x equal 99? If it does, then we are going to print number 99 is at index, and remember that the index will be an integer, so we need to cast to x, and then we need to do x plus equals 1 so that it can loop through each time. So we'll run that. We'll pick a number. One of them has to be 99. Again, if it does that, it might just be that you've pressed enter and it's quite sensitive. Okay, so it's not like that, so let's have a look at our code. Let's change this just to 2. So we're just missing a plus here. Let's try again. Okay. So with coding, you'll see that you often have to debug your own code. Okay, so it looks like it's just going to our first while statement and then it's not going to our second one. So someone's pointing out line 81. So it's picking a number. So the inputs we're getting are integers. So this should be an integer. So I'm sure if Jake's watching, he'll be able to debug my code as he usually does. Okay, we'll try this. So I don't think it's that either. Okay, we'll come back to this one and debug it in a bit, just so we're not wasting time. Okay, so Jake's on the chat now. Let's have a look. Right, so we've got our list here. We have our numbers. We have our variables with our while loops. So whether this is 10 or not, it should still let us jump to the next loop, but it's not liking that. So it's definitely this loop that doesn't seem to be happy. So let's make sure that our list is working. Okay, so now it's working, but so let's change this to 10. So that appears to be working. All we did was add a print, so surely it should still work without that. We'll see. Again, the enter button is very sensitive. So I'm not sure what we changed there for it to work, but it does work. So that is good news. Again, you'll find a lot with coding, stuff like that happens, and you've just got to slowly go through line by line and try to decode your work. Okay, so number 7. We're going to print a multiplication table for the number 18 up to 15. So this is a nice little while loop. So we're going to have a while loop, so we need our variable outside. So while I is less than 15, because we want to do it up to the 15th number, we're going to print I times 18, and after we print that, we're going to add 1 each time. So what it will do, it will start at 0. 0 times 18 is 0, then it'll add 1 and carry on all the way through till 15, where it'll break out of the loop. Okay, so rewrite question B2 from session 4 using a while loop. So to print the numbers 1 to 100, we just used our for loop last time. So for x in range 1 to 101, And does anyone remember why we had to use 101? So the reason we use 101 is because Python starts at 0. So if we go to start at 0 and we put 100 in, it would only go to 99. So that's how you do it with a for loop, but this time we want to use a while loop. So again, we have our variable on the outside equals 0. While I is less than 100, add 1 to I. So that's I plus equals 1. And then we will print I. And we run again. And it's the exact same, but just using a while loop instead of a for loop. Okay, so we're going to rewrite question B8 from session 3 using a while loop. So this was the code for session 3, and it was where we were getting our marks, but to get them 3 times we had to repeat ourselves 3 times. But instead of having to do that this time, we can use a while loop. So we're going to have our lesson variable equal none at the moment. And because it's our report card, we'll print at the top report card. Okay, and now we'll create our code that was similar to before. So we had lesson equals input, and then we'd ask the user to input their lesson. And then we will ask them to input their mark. We know the mark is going to be a numerical value, so we'll use our int, and we'll ask them to input your mark. So question B8, sorry, was, I think there was a typo in the questions on Twitch, but this one, if you look at session 3 and you look at B8, this is the question for that. So if mark was greater than 80, we got to print lesson and then we gave them an A grade. If mark was greater or equal to 80 and the mark was greater than 60, we'd print lesson plus so this is getting repeated a lot, so I'll just copy that for later. So the next one was if the mark was greater or equal to 60 but more than 50, they got a C. Same for a D, but this time it was between 50 and 45. And lastly, it was an less than 25 and you got an F grade. We had our else, print, go and see your teacher. Okay, so we try it once, maths, and they got 78. Perfect. Okay, but last time, if we want to do it 3 times, we had to print it out 3 times. This time, we can put it in a while loop. And we can simply state, while lesson isn't a blank, so nothing's been entered, then, and importantly, we have to tab all of this. Okay, so we'll do maths, and they got 78. And as you can see, we've produced a forever loop. And it's because we've left these outside of our loop, so it's not asking the question again. So it only took one and just kept looping through. So we have our maths, which is a B. Let's try that again because I didn't put a number. So 78. Now we have French, which was 45. German, which was 89. And then if I enter through those, it just stops it because it hasn't received any. The while loop can't go on anymore because we've entered a blank. Okay, so now we're going to ask the user to enter the names of people who entered a prize draw. We're going to select a random winner and print their name. So if we're going to do something random, the first thing we need is our random module. We're going to get a list of names, so we'll need a blank list. And we're going to use names in our while loop, so that has to equal none. So while name doesn't equal a blank string, we will get a name. But if the name is blank, so if the name, let's just move that a bit further down. If the name isn't blank, then we're going to add the name to our list. Okay, let's see if that works by printing out our entrance list. So we'll have, I'll enter myself, I'll enter Jake, I'll enter Sanj, and Graham. Okay, so there our list is working, perfect. So now we just want a random person from the list. And to do that, we will use our random module, but this time we'll use the choice function. And that will pick a random person from our list. So we'll try the list again. So this time Graham won. We can try in a different order. And this time Sanj won. Okay, and now on to our last question, which is probably our biggest one. Create a rock, paper, scissors game, which is run against the computer. This is a game where you select either rock, paper, scissors, and you can compare it to your opponent's choice. Rock beats scissors, paper beats rock, scissors beats paper. If you choose the same, then you play again. Expand this so it's the best of 3 games. I can see someone in the chat asking questions about previous weeks. The videos are, if they're not on Twitch, they're on the YouTube channel, so I would go back and rewatch them to get a further understanding of the previous weeks. Okay, so the first thing we'll do is we'll get our computer choice. So this is what the computer will pick from. So we have our computer choice, and for the computer choice we'll need the random module. So it's computer choice, random.choice, and for this we can use a list of items. So we'll have rock, or you can have paper, or we can have scissors. We need a user choice, and that can be an input, make your choice, rock, paper, or scissors. Just missing our equals here. And just missing. There we go. So we're getting a computer choice and the rock and the computer and the user. So like previous examples, we can do if the user choice is equal to the computer choice, then we can print draw. Then we can do our first elif statement. Elif user choice is equal to rock and computer choice is equal to paper. We know paper beats rock, so we can print you lose. Then we'll carry on with these. So we'll carry on with our loser ones. So we have paper beating rock. We know scissors loses to rock, and we know paper loses to scissors. Now we can do our wins. So if we have paper and the computer has rock, we win. If we have rock and the computer has scissors, we win. And if we have scissors and the computer has paper, we win. Else we'll say please pick from rock, paper, or scissors to participate in the game. Okay, let's see if that works. So I'll pick rock. I lose. I'll try again with paper. Still losing. We'll try again with paper again. We've got a draw. So we're getting different things. Again, if you just at the point where you want to just test that each of your things work, you can print out the computer choice. And so we know it's paper, so I want to see what happens to put paper in. Right, okay, we know the draw works. They've put scissors this time, I'll put rock. Brilliant, that's worked. We'll try again. Okay, so all of our elements seem to be working. So now we have a rock, paper, scissors game. So we will now put this into a loop so we can play 3 times. So if we've got a while loop, we'll need to ask. We'll need some variables on the outside, so we'll need a computer score. And that equals 0. We'll have a user score. And that equals 0. Okay. So what we are going to do is we need our computer scores and our user scores to be input into our code. So if they get a draw, they can have if they draw, they both get a point. But for all the ones that we lose, only the computer will get a point. So if we lose here, the computer gets a point. Same here. Same here. But for all the ones we win, we get a point. So while the computer score is less than 3 and the user score is less than 3, then, and we'll have to indent all of this, we will play our game. Let's try it, see if it works. So I'll put paper. Okay, so we've got an error. So we're just missing our So I've put the wrong one here, so we need user underscore score. And just make sure everything is tabbed in correctly into your loop. Okay, so let's see where I've put the wrong one. So these ones need to be score. So let's change that up. The good thing is if you highlight a variable or if you highlight a string of text, it's going to show you each area it needs to be, it appears. So as you can see, we've played it 3 times. I took 3 points and it's broken out of the game. So that is how you can create a little rock, paper, scissors game and play it 3 times against the computer. So I know we had a lot of content this week. Again, the videos are on Twitch for 2 weeks, so you can rewatch them, redo the questions. If you found it a bit difficult, I would keep doing it until you get it really, really ingrained into your knowledge. Just because it's one of those things that the more you try, the more you go for it, the better you will get at it. So I'm just going to check the Slido and see if there's any new questions. So we've got Tree Guys put in some code to see why it's not working, so I can have a look at that afterwards. I don't understand question 4. I'm actually finding this week really hard as I don't understand 4 and upward. Now we've gone through them, hope you have a better understanding of them. But again, if you are still struggling a little bit, just go back through the lesson, go back through the answers, code them yourself. Make sure if you have any questions about the code, you can send it through. Why can't we see all the Slido questions? I can't find my questions either. So any questions that I've answered either in the lesson, I just get rid of so that we can make sure we have only the relevant questions. Someone's asked, they've put some code in and they've asked, does it work? You tell me, because you'll be able to test, you'll be able to tell me if it works because you'll be either getting errors or you'll be getting the answer. Any general guidance on usually when to use a for loop and when to use a while loop? So I like to use a for loop if I'm going to do something for a very specific amount of numbers. So some of these questions here, for example, let's have a look. So these, because you have to create another variable for x, I probably would have done this as a for loop. Neither's incorrect. I just would find it easier because I know that I'm only going to a specific range. Or if you have a specific list that you want to loop through, I'd use for loops. But when you have conditions you want to check, then I'd use your while loop. Can you please put up both lesson 3 question and answer, as I did not get to complete the work as it disappeared. So if you go onto Twitch, the questions will be at the bottom. Also, if you go into the FAQ section, underneath, there will be a link to our YouTube video. The YouTube videos are the exact same videos as these, but they just stay on indefinitely. So Twitch only lets us leave our videos on for 14 days, but after that we move them to the YouTube link that is in the FAQs. So you can go and watch them as many times as you need to. Are we supposed to use a while loop for all the questions this week, or can we use for loops? So because we're trying to get you to use while loops, I would suggest doing both. So for this question, example number 5, I showed you how you could do it with a while loop or with a for loop. But again, it's up to you. If you're getting the right code answers at the end, that's fine. If we're really stuck, can we copy the answers? I mean, copying the answers, you're still going to be learning something. So if you're getting the code from us here, you're writing it out, you're testing it, and it works, then hopefully by copying the answer, it definitely will help your understanding. Can you show how to do the score on rock, paper, scissors again? Yep, so what I did was this was to put it into my while loop. So I created 2 variables outside of the while loop, one called computer score and one called user score. I wanted them to start at 0 because then I know they're starting at the lowest value. So for the person that needed question 3 as well, I think Jake's just put it in the chat so you'll be able to access it directly from there. So you've created your variables of your scores outside, and then inside, for every element. So if it's a draw, some people don't think they should get a point, so you could change this to 0 so that this will not give them any points. But then you add, if the computer wins one, they get a +1. And if you win, you get a +1. So every time this is looping through, it's adding to your variables here. And as soon as one of them becomes, so we've got this loop while both of them are less than 3. As soon as one of these now gets over 3, it'll break our loop. How do you indent lots of lines with a, so what you can do is you highlight it and you press the tab button, and that will tab your whole section together. While and if still confuse me. What I do, if any element still confuses you, I'd go back and re-watch the if video, and I'd re-watch this while video. I'd practice the questions a few times, because the more you do them, the more you understand them. So that's what I'd advise there. Okay, so there's no more new questions in the REPL. Tree Guy, if Jake hasn't helped you, I think he's helped you with some of the code. If not, I'll have a look at this after I've left today. But other than that, I think we're done for this week. So I hope you all have a good weekend, and we will see you next Tuesday at 10 o'clock for lesson 6. See you later. So someone's put report card question, please. Again, these videos are online for 14 days, so you'll be able to go back and rewatch it. But all we did was put it in a while the lesson is not blank. This is the same code as we did on week 3. So we just put it into a while loop. As soon as you don't input something for lesson, it'll break out of your while loop. Okay, cool. See you later. See you next week. Have a good weekend. Bye.